Pokemon is a series that has an astounding amount of depth hidden within its simplistic battle system. And one thing that can make these battles so interesting is how you build your team and utilize those Pokemon's movesets. Maybe you're using a more bulky Pokemon that would appreciate inflicting status conditions and bolstering its survivability. Or maybe you're using more of an all-out attacker that wants to inflict as much damage as possible. Or maybe you're using a Pokemon that fills in more of a supportive role to help out your team in various ways. But what if you wanted to play through a Pokemon game without using any moves at all? I'm Davey Gunface, and today I'm going to ask and answer a question that nobody has probably ever thought to themselves. Can you beat Pokemon Black without using any moves? Now before we begin, I'm not going to go too in depth with the rules because, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I did want to add in 3 quick notes. Firstly, due to the nature of how long battles play out with this rule set, almost all the gameplay is going to be sped up. If that's something that upsets you, I do genuinely apologize, but battles in this playthrough can take an absolute eternity, and the emulator speed up function helped me get this video out before 2027. Secondly, why Pokemon Black? Well, to be entirely blunt, I just wanted to play Gen 5. And Black and White 2 aren't possible due to the goddamn Pokestar Studio segment, and Pokemon Black has one incredibly small edge over Pokemon White, but we'll get there when we get there. Thirdly, I will be skipping over the starter battles since you don't really have a choice here, in any Pokemon game as far as I'm aware, but I'll intentionally lose both battles to ensure that the game starts as if my starter was brand new. And with that out of the way, let's begin our fun and interactive adventure. For my starter, I ended up choosing Snivy. Unfortunately, none of the starters would make it too far in this journey, so the only qualifications for who I chose was who had the better defenses, which Snivy won out on both fronts. After getting my Dumbsnake, it's time to begin our adventure, and to be entirely honest, the early game in this challenge is the most monotonous thing I've ever had to do in any video I've ever made. Fortunately, you can get past in pretty easy. With the money you're given at the start, you can just buy a few potions, and proceed to throw a Pokeball at his cat 84 times until it kills itself, and probably give in crippling PTSD, but everything after that is where it all goes downhill. So to beat the first gym comfortably, you'll want a Herdier with Intimidate, the Elemental Monkey offered to you at the Dream Yard, and a bunch of potions. This is a problem with a bunch of layers to it, so let's start off with how you grind. Since we don't have access to Pokemon that have any good offensive abilities, we need to grind out the wild Pokemon by making them kill themselves with struggle. Every single battle. And since most of the early moves like Tackle or Tail Whip have an absurd amount of PP, this means every Pokemon can take anywhere from 80 to nearly 200 turns each, and that's not including trainers who may have multiple Pokemon. For instance, Youngster Joey. He alone requires you to tank 105 tackles, 50 bites, and still have enough health to survive the Pokemon struggle. So to go about this grind, I wanted to Lillipup with Vital Spirit, and fill the rest of the party with Lillipups with Pickup. With our party of goons up and running, there's only one Pokemon you can consistently grind in the early game, and I do really only mean one. Since Lillipup and Patrat both have wasted creature defense, as well as having same type attack bonus on their moves, your team isn't going to survive against them at first, so we have to grind the level 4 Purloins in Route 2. Luckily you can catch Lillipups all the way to level 7 in this route, but you still have to get one of those to 16, which, well, it takes fucking forever. It took me days and days of in-game time to get my Herdier with Intimidate, my Monkey, aptly named Monkey, and enough potions to challenge the gym leader. The reason why you need the Intimidate and Monkey is because of the gym leader's workup move. Both of his Pokemon have it, and you're not going to really have a fun time trying to tank a Lillipup with 4 times attack, hence Intimidate. And luckily the Elemental Monkey can tank the enemy Monkey even when it's fully set up. So as long as you have enough potions, you don't have to worry about grinding your Monkey. And no, not like that, you fucking furry. Once I exhausted Incinerate's PP, I was able to beat the first gym leader and obtain the Trio badge. And immediately after, everything is so much easier for 2 main reasons. Firstly is the access to the Pokemon daycare to help grind levels, and secondly is that rustling grass is now found on the overworld, where we gain access to quite possibly the most important Pokemon this entire playthrough, and no, this isn't some sort of cruel sick joke, Audino. For the first time in human history, Audino is immensely useful in something. And yeah, I know, it sounds fucking ludicrous, but stick with me here. Audino has access to the Regenerator ability, as well as a monstrous amount of bulk that makes the struggle stalling tactic infinitely cheaper and more effective. Instead of having to whale out hundreds of Pokédollars per battle, now all I need to do is swap between two Audinos over and over again, which sounds minuscule at first, but in the late game you really appreciate that money, and it adds up extremely quickly. Because of this I caught two Audinos, named them both accordingly, another Vital Spirit level up to get a second Intimidate, and a Musharna I accidentally found, I guess. Having access to two Pokemon, each with Regenerator and Intimidate, all I had to do was swap between these four infinitely every battle, and I'm making this segment incredibly brief because although this took an immense amount of time to actually play through, in terms of raw gameplay it could just be summed down to doing that. Once I showed Lenora why my bug is superior to her bug, we can move on to Pinwheel Forest to unlock the first way to directly deal damage in this playthrough, Venipede. Venipede has access to the Poison Point ability, which has a chance to poison your enemy if it uses a move that makes contact. Although contact moves are based on a case-by-case basis, most of the time it's going to be physical moves with a very occasional special move. And here's where I have to interject with something that's incredibly tedious about this run. Throughout the game you're going to find a multitude of ways to injure physical attackers, but almost no good way to injure special attackers. I was hoping to get something along the lines of a Gigalith with Sandstream or a Vanillux with Snow Warning, but unfortunately both of those abilities were only given to them in Generation 6, which means there's not really a consistent ability to deal damage to special attackers. Sure, there are some abilities like Synchronize or Magic Bounce that could potentially do good, but the amount of grinding required for such a minimal reward doesn't make it worth it at all. That means almost all special attackers in this game are going to be dealt with in the same way, struggle stalling. Although you're not going to see a whole lot of it due to the power of editing magic, I just wanted to say it here since that's inevitably going to be commented on. But for now, almost all the early game Pokemon have a contact move, so Owie makes itself useful immediately. I grinded it up to level 28 so it can evolve straight into Scolipede once it levels up twice, and we moved forward to Castelia City. Berg was still fairly easy, and although I couldn't poison his Whirlipede or Weavani, I was still able to stall him out of PP and obtain the Beetle Badge. Afterwards, Owie evolved into his final form, and took me on a Ferris wheel ride that I did not consent to, and I challenged the 4th gym. This gym was probably the easiest one we've done thus far, since most trainers have a contact move to poison themselves with, and they're all also very rich boys and girls. Since Unova is based on New York, Game Freak made sure to be accurate and included like 7,000 vending machines throughout every corner of the region. Fresh water, soda pop, and lemonade are going to be the most cost-effective way to heal my party up for most of the game. After I poisoned every rich kid to death and stole their child support, I 1v1'd the gym leader who was incredibly fucking fond of using Volt Switch, poisoned her to death too, and obtained the Bolt Badge. After harnessing the power of electricity, I battled Bianca and Sharon for like the 1500th goddamn time, and there's a good reason I don't include them in this video. In case you haven't noticed, I haven't included them yet, and I don't plan on it because they're all incredibly easy and I hate them, and please let me play through the fucking game. I don't want to 1v1 your fucking Stoutland anymore, leave me be! Anyways, moving on to Driftvale, we can get into an alleyway and receive the best item for this playthrough, Heroin, but also Rocky Helmet. Although Owie has been more toxic than the average Twitter user, it's incredibly useful to not worry about the ability proc and be able to do consistent damage to anybody who dares interact with your existence. So basically still a Twitter user. For now it's going on Owie, but I think anybody who's ever played a Pokemon game in their entire life knows where this will be going soon enough. After Team Plasma was being a Pokemon team and hiding in a fucking freezer because I don't know, we got to challenge the Driftvale gym, which was overall a lot more difficult to two big reasons. Number 1, Palpitoad. This sex toy looking ass doesn't understand the true meaning of Christmas and refuses to get poisoned by an 8-foot tall centipede of death. Number 2, Excadrill. After his drill wasn't the drill that made a shitty anime reference, I got the Quake badge and entered into Chargestone Cave, where we found the Pokemon that basically every person in the known universe knew that I was going to catch. Tynamo. Nah, it's Ferroseed. Due to Ferroseed's Iron Barb's ability, as well as being able to give it Rocky Helmet means one thing. Physical attackers don't have a very good day. I named it Sudoku because Nintendo is literally 1984 and I couldn't name it Bastard. Then I caught a Tranquil whose only purpose in its life was to use Fly, hence the name Fly Slave. It took me back to the Pokemon daycare, where I immediately leveled Sudoku so it can evolve into Ferrothorn. Was she a bit overleveled? Yeah, I'm not gonna pretend like she isn't, but honestly doesn't really achieve a whole lot. After Chargestone, we need to get to the Celestial Tower to ring the Bells of Awakening, and here we can catch a Litwick for its Flame Body ability, which combines the potential damage of AoE as well as reducing the enemy's physical attack. I caught a Litwick, but me being the fucking idiot that I was, forgot that it also had a chance to have Flash Fire instead of Flame Body, and in all truthfulness, I was too lazy to try and go through the route again, so Candor was just never meant to be. After a vicious boss battle against a Bell Gargoyle, we ran the Bell of Awakening and we can move on to the Dalton City Gym. This gym was essentially purgatory where nothing ever wanted to touch my Ferrothorn. Then I got to Skyla, who apparently watched too much It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and took Danny DeVito's life-changing words to heart. Suicide is badass. And now I have the Jet Badge, and probably a lot of emotional guilt and baggage that I'll never be able to get rid of, but I got the Jet Badge. After this was Twist Mountain, which in all truthfulness was still Twist Mountain, and immediately after was the Icarus City Gym. If it seems like the pacing of this video has increased exponentially, that's mostly because a lot of the areas you unlock at this point are either entirely optional, or optional to explore. Sure, I could spend 18 more years in Twist Mountain, and sure, I could go back and travel through Route 17 or 18 now, but their usefulness at this stage of the game varies between non-existent or minuscule. The Ice Gym was incredibly annoying, but there was nothing I really struggled with. There are Vanillish and Cryogonal aplenty here, neither of which have any contact moves, meaning that I had to struggle stall them to death. But yet again, the gym leader is the exception. Vanillish has Astonish, Cryogonal has Rapid Spin, and Beartic has Slash, all of which make contact and makes Aoi and Sudoku very happy goons, and I beat the gym. After obtaining the Icicle badge, Team Plasma starts doing Team Plasma things at Dragon Spiral Tower, and from this point onward they no longer qualify as a threat. Watchog, Liepard, and Trubbish all have moves that make contact and aren't very effective against Sudoku. But I wasn't quick enough. I wonder why I wasn't, it's almost like I'm not using any moves. But N receives his Red Eyes Black Dragon, and it's off to Desert Resort. Although their Scraggy and Crocorox fared a bit better, I was still able to defeat them, obtained the Light Stone, and moved on to Opalucid Town? I'm not going to pretend like I know how to pronounce that, but this is the last gym of the entire game, and debatably the easiest. Although the amount of setup that the trainers Dinos, Fractures, and Druddigons can set up is intimidating at first glance, they still have to try and get through Sudoku, which, well, they don't get through Sudoku. It doesn't really matter how much you spam Dragon Dance, Sudoku is going to resist all of your Dragon and Dark moves, and honestly you're just going to look like an idiot. After this complete war crime, I obtained the final badge, and all that remains is Victory Road and the Elite Four. But before we get there, I wanted to introduce two new Pokemon into the team. Firstly is Volcarona. Although it's fairly interchangeable with Chandelure since they both have Flame Body and satisfy the same niche, I found that Volcarona barely wins out in the end by having a slightly better typing and leaning more towards health and special defense. I named it Lamp. The second Pokemon I caught was Jellicent, and specifically a male Jellicent with a water absorb ability. The first part doesn't necessarily matter. I hate to sound sexist, but I'm a firm believer in male Jellicent supremacy. He's just the Pringles mascot with a blue tint and a crown, hence the name. But the second part is a bit more important. Jellicent isn't in the team to do damage, or to have an ability that hinders his enemies. He's in the team for one reason and one reason alone: his typing. You'll see him in action soon enough, but for now, he's a surprise tool that'll help us later. After Lamp and Pringles were both raised to an appropriate level, we had our final team for the rest of the game. Pringles the Jellicent, Lamp the Volcarona, Owie the Scolipede, Sudoku the Ferrothorn, and Mata Mata the Audinos. Once I was fully prepared, I went to Victory Road, which was actually fairly uneventful. I was in and out within a few minutes, but afterwards, of course, was the Elite Four. Despite everything, the Unova Elite Four is still the Unova Elite Four, which means they have the Unova Elite Four theme, which is a complete and utter fucking bop. For the first Elite Four member I challenged, I went ahead and fought Marshall first since he's by far the easiest. Almost all of his moves make contact, and his leading Pokemon throw isn't too intimidating. The lead Pokemon is actually pretty important since the Elite Four members will usually waste both their full restores on their leading Pokemon, which can make the rest of the battle infinitely easier. Cheryl eventually killed himself with Storm Throw. I baited out both of Maya Shell's jump kicks into Jellicent. Conkeldurr died from Owie's poison and Sudoku, and Sock spammed Karate Chop on Sudoku until it fainted. With the first Elite Four member down, I was feeling pretty confident and decided to do the hardest one next, Caitlyn. She doesn't have a single move that makes contact, making all of my abilities except Regenerator entirely useless. She also has two Pokemon that can easily set up with Calm Mind and Charge Beam, and that can very easily wipe out my team if I don't play it safe. I started the battle by maxing out Lamp's special defense, and although that worked incredibly well at first, once Sigilyph came in it didn't really matter. I didn't anticipate its Air Slash to be a one-turn kill, so I had to constantly swap between my Mata Matas until it ran out of Air Slash PP, which I could then set up my special defenses again. Afterwards was Gothitelle, which immediately got a critical hit on my Lamp, which means I had to try setting up again on Sudoku. Ferrothorn does have a pretty nasty special defense stat, as well as resisting most of Gothitelle's moves, but even that was pretty risky, and I had to waste a bunch of my healing items until Gothitelle ran out of PP on her offensive moves. Afterwards I could get my team healthy again and take on her strongest Pokemon, Musharna. I had to waste a ton of healing items here again, since I had to make it run out of PP on her Charge Beam and Psychic. But afterwards, all I can do is use Shadow Ball, which doesn't affect my Audinos, then try and Reflect, which obviously doesn't do anything, then all I can do is struggle itself to death. Once I defeated Caitlyn, I moved on to Grimsley, who was fortunately a lot easier. All of his Pokemon knew contact moves, so all I had to do was get Sudoku to maximum defense, have him waste both full restores on Scrafty, and by then, all Grimsley could do is watch in horror as all of his Pokemon killed themselves in vain. That's kind of dark. Actually extremely so, but it kind of fits. Last on the chopping block was Ghost Bitch, who led with Cophagrigus. I tried to burn it by baiting a Grass Knot into Volcarona, but it really wasn't a fan of that and it ended up struggling itself to death anticlimactically. After that, she sent in Golurk, which used Curse on the first turn, and then I baited its Brick Break into Owlie to get it poisoned, and then I swap into Sudoku to finish it off. After that was Chandelure, who I was incredibly scared of at first, but luckily it only has one really good move against my team, which is Fire Blast, and that only has 5 PP. My team resists Shadow Ball and Psychic pretty well, and Payback won't do a whole lot with its humongous 55 base attack stat. After its flame was snuffed out, the last Pokemon was Jellicent. All I had to do was struggle stall it to death, and with that I beat the Elite Four, and moved on to the champion. But I was too late. Natural Harmonia Gropius already won, and yes, that's his fucking name. Gropius. The kid was pretty much doomed to be abused, honestly. Before I confronted N, I bought a few healing items and had an exhilarating boss fight against Blue Eyes White Dragon that nearly brought me to my knee. It was just way too difficult. As soon as I caught it, I sent him straight to the Forever box because it doesn't have any cool abilities, and it's time to fight Gropius. And this is the only reason why I chose Pokemon Black. Zekrom knew a bunch of contact moves, and Reshiram didn't. If you're expecting something more grandiose, I hate to disappoint you. Literally the only reason in choosing an addition was so In could kill himself slightly faster. Woo, what a choice. After Zekrom went bye-bye, In sent in Klinklang, which I knew was actually a furry in disguise. I baited it into using Night Slash against Sudoku over and over again, which was fairly risky due to it knowing Focus Blast and Flamethrower, but it eventually worked out. Afterwards he sent in Vanillux, then the real Klinklang, both of which needed to be stalled out with Mata, and all that remained was Archeops and Caracosta. I was able to poison Caracoco with Owie and finish it off with Sudoku, and then Archeops spammed Acrobatics until it killed itself, and the battle was over. After Rin's defeat, Getsus came back and was just an incredibly abusive asshole, and for that he needed to perish. He led off with Cofagrigus, who could only really damage Mata with Psychic. Toxic was fairly annoying, but since it ramps up over time, it never really got to do as much damage as he'd hope. Afterwards it struggled itself to death, but not before Getsus wasted his full restores on it. And then he sent out his ace, Hydreigon, and this is where Pringles came in with full effect. Pringles was only damaged normally with one of his moves, being Dragon Pulse, a move that doesn't have a whole lot of PP. Other than that, it has Fire Blast, which only does 50% damage, Focus Blast, which it is entirely immune to, and Surf that it actually heals from due to the water absorbability. Pringles was able to tank Hydreigon like an absolute champion until it struggled itself to death, after which Getsus sent in Boufflant. I knew that Boufflant was going to go for Wild Charge, so I swapped into Lamp to see if I could get the burn off, which it did. The team's not pulling any punches here. After Boufflant fainted, he sent in Electros. I sacrificed Ally here to heal up Lamp again, which Electros spammed Wild Charge until it fainted from recoil. He then sent out Seismitoad, which could barely hurt Sudoku at all, and then there was only one Pokemon in the way of my victory, Bisharp. Fortunately, or unfortunately depending on how you view it, Bisharp was the easiest Pokemon to deal with, since he kept trying to spam X-Scissor against my Owie, which didn't really work out, I have to say. And just like that, we beat Getsus, In gets a little too close for my liking, the credits roll, and I was kind of able to beat Pokemon Black without using any moves. Have I mentioned that I hate Sharon and Bianca yet? That's a good note to leave this on. Fuck Sharon and Bianca.